Hello, you lovely sewing people. I'm Hazel from Hazel A Patterns, and today we are going to make the turned out zipper pouch. The turned out zipper pouch has been incredibly hard to film the inside, which is where all the secrets are. So I've just moved all the lights so we can see inside. The smaller side has a plain interior, but the larger side has all of the pockets. So you can see on one side we have an interior zipped pocket, but the zip is facing upwards, making it really easy to reach in and grab. And the other side has 3 flat pockets that are pleated. The one we're going to make today is this one here in this gorgeous Tilda fabric. The other one is made in some Cloud 9 fabrics from So Fabulous Fabrics. So this is the file that has the pattern pieces in it. 18 pages. The first 3 pages are just going to explain to you what to cut out where, and very importantly, I recommend that you interface before you cut out. And 2 of these pieces, well, 4 pieces, so the wrist strap, the strap connector and the zipper tab ends don't need to be interfaced, so I suggest you cut those out before you interface and then interface the rest and cut them out as normal. I am going to make for you today the version that is in the pattern, which has the pleated pocket with the flaps on it on one side and the zip pocket on the other. There is also the option, which is why you've got an extra pattern piece here, of either having no pockets whatsoever or just putting the pleated pockets on and either putting elastic in the top or just having them as straight pleated pockets, can't speak, without the flaps on the top. So that's what that lining piece there is for. The outer side, you need to fuse the fleece on, and you can see it's got a margin of 1/4 of an inch on 3 sides and 1/2 an inch at the top. There's no interfacing at all on the lining B fabric. You can see I've transferred the mark there for the hook and loop tape, and then everything else that's got marks, in general they're on the back unless they're a stitching line, in which case they are on the front so you can see to stitch them. Right, I think we're ready to get going. The first thing we're going to do then for step 1 is we are going to make our recessed zipper piece. Now I usually use zipping by the metre, but this time I've got these El Cheapo zippers that I got from some stash somewhere. I'm just going to show you, if you fancy putting a nice pretty zipper pull on, if you just take the bottom stopper off, this is a tiny bit fiddly, you can feed the zipper pull on in exactly the same you would if you were doing zipper by the metre. Oop. And of course you've got no zipper teeth at the bottom there, so you can get it on really evenly, really easily. There we go. I'm actually going to cut that piece off because I just am. So the first thing we're going to make, I'm going to get rid of that zipper. First thing we're going to do is we are going to make the end tab. Now there are various ways of doing this on the internet, different tutorials. I particularly like to have a tiny little zipper end tab. So this is a bit fiddly. This is how I always do mine. Please feel free to do yours a different way if you prefer it. So I'm going to fold in and press just 1/4 inch. On the side. Obviously I realise what I haven't done is shown you dealing with the other end of the zip. So fold it in half and press it, open it out, fold it into the middle. And do the same again at the other end. So you should end up with a nice sort of squarish little piece. Now, because I've got such a nice, neat and tiny little tab, I now need to make my zipper tape a bit smaller. So what I'm going to do, just use a bit of glue here, but you can just use pins. Yes, I'm going to fold this in so that the tape measures around 1/2 inch, which means, of course, on a number 3 zip, which the whole tape is usually 1 inch wide, just means folding it into the middle, like this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to open this out, with this facing down. I'm going to take it over to the machine. I'm going to rest this right in the centre, and I'm going to stitch this at 1/4 inch. Right, we'll do the other end of the zip before I show you any more. So 1/2 inch in from each end, make a mark on the zipper tape, and you're going to open that out, and you need to swing the tape across and down, so there's a little triangle that forms at the back. I don't know if you can see that. And then at the front you should have a nice 90-degree angle. Now you can glue that if you feel like putting some glue on it. You can just put a pin in it, but it's reasonably important to get that level. So do it and then check that it's level with the other side, which that one is. Okay. Yeah, that's got that in place. So back to where we were. So I've stitched across. I used my hump jumper because hump jumper helps everything run more smoothly. And I'm just going to make sure I've cut off any little fronds or ends, because you don't want anything showing on the outside. And then I'm going to fold that back in, fold it up on the fold, and you can see the stitching line is completely hidden inside now, so it doesn't matter how messy it is. And then this is the bit where, again, you can use glue if you need to. Just make sure all the raw edges are tucked in. And then take that back to the machine and you're going to stitch around in a square. I'll go and do that and then you can see the finished item. Here we go. Finished. And you can see nice and neat. So what we're going to do now is we are going to press the folds for our recessed zipper piece. So I've got them so that the pattern is actually together, so the right way around, although it doesn't really matter. These are really tiny pieces. Sorry that they're very fiddly, but what I'm trying to do here is make it so that there's minimum bulk, because we're all mostly using a domestic machine for doing this. So I'm going to do both of them at the same time, because that way I can make sure that I get a nice matching pair. So mind your fingers on the hot iron. And do the other side, and then I'm going to come back and refold those. There we go. The purpose of this recessed zipper piece is so that you can have the excess zipper, so you can open your pouch nice and wide. But we didn't really want to add width. We wanted the pouch to be nice and narrow at the top. So hence this is literally just a bit wider than the seam allowance by the time it's stitched on. So there we go. And that's ready. So then I'm going to turn them over the right way up to make sure I've still got them as a matched pair. Then I'm going to take my zipper, and the end that I've folded over is going to go into the end with a double fold, because that's going to enclose this completely. So we know that zipper is going to go in like that. So I'm going to start by opening this right out. And I don't know if you can see, there's the fold, and I just want that to come slightly inside so that when this is all folded over, once it's been turned around, it will actually sit neatly inside there. I'm just going to pop a pin in there for now, and then I'll clip the rest of it. Now when I go over to sew this on the machine with zipper foot, I'm going to stitch it from between the folds, so between that fold there and just up to this fold here. So I'm going to go and do that, and then we'll do the next stage. There we go. You can see I've stitched just inside there. Used my hump jumper obviously at this end to get over that end. So I'm going to refold this end here, and going to start finger pressing everything away from the zip. So I'm going to hold that with a clip. Make sure it covers over the seam allowance, because you don't want that poking out on your finished piece. So finger pressed all the way down, and then holding that nice and tightly, refold and fold over again. And you've now enclosed the end of the zip. So I'm going to pop a clip on that, and then I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to top stitch it at 1/8 of an inch in. And there we go. You can see the top stitching there. That end's nice and enclosed, and you can't see the stitching poking out this end. So I'm now just going to do the other side. So first thing I'm going to do is put the zip back together just to make sure I'm still working the same way round, which I am. And then I will go and repeat that all over again, and I'll show you the finished article. And you can see I have completed the recessed zipper piece. I've made sure that everything is even at both ends, and you can see you've got your top stitching. On the front you've got 1 row, and on the back, get that to focus, you've got 2 rows of top stitching. And here is size 1 for comparison. So next step is to make the zipper pocket. Now, this zipper pocket is made in a very similar way to how we normally do our pockets, but I'm hoping you can see into this finished version. The zipper actually sits facing upwards, which is very handy when you want to just reach in and open something. Just thought I'd do this as a slightly different version of a zipper pocket. So for this one, we're not going to stitch the zipper into the seam because we need to roll it. So what I'm going to do is use zipper end tabs. So these are really straightforward. You've got your pieces, put your short ends together, press, put the centre, the edge into the centre, same on the other side. And then you end up basically with a mini bit of binding. I've made mine 3/8 of an inch when they're finished. You can make yours bigger or smaller if you want to. And then to fit it on, I'm going to actually use a little dab of glue to hold it in position to make sure it doesn't slide around. And then I'm going to take that over to the machine and just top stitch it using my hump jumper to help me get nicely over the centre of the zip. So I'm going to do both of those, and then we'll move on to the next part. And there we have it. Our end tabs are on. The next thing I need to do is just find the centre point of the zipper. Because this zipper is not going right to the end, you need to match up the notches to make sure it is centrally lined up. In fact, pretty much everything in this pattern is centrally lined up. So a little bit of pen there, and we are going to start our stack. So we want our zipper to pull to the left. Obviously you can do it the other way if you want to. So that's the head going this way. So I'm going to put the zipper face down and match that centre notch. Just going to put a clip in now to hold it. And then we're going to put the pocket bag on. Now you want the bottom of the pocket bag needs to go at the top and then flip it over. And same again, we're going to match that centre notch. So everything is even. I'm going to put some more clips in and then take it over and stitch it. And there we go. You can see I've stitched all the way to the end, so over the zipper tabs, and I did use my hump jumper. And now we're actually going to just finger press the zipper away from the fabric. I'm going to do the same with the lining as well. So there we have it. So I'm going to lift up to match the top of my zipper to the top of my lining. Again with a little clip. And we have the upper part of the lining is going to go on top. So I'm going to clip that, stitch it, and bring it back, and we'll do the next section, which is the bit that makes the zip rise up. And here we go, all stitched on, same as before, and this time we're just going to lift up the pocket and pull it away from the zip. Now, at the moment, this looks like an ordinary inset pocket. But what we're going to do next is pull this up, pull this section down, and we're going to match the seams just here. I'm going to put a pin in it because I seem to have used all my clips. And do the same on the other side. Sorry, my cat is attempting to get into the studio. Right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that over to the machine, and definitely using the hump jumper, I'm going to stitch into about 3/8 of an inch. So I'm actually going to mark that to make sure I don't go too far. There we go. I'm going to stitch forward and reverse back to make sure that's nice and strong. There we go. So stitched it both sides there, and seam allowances are pointing down now on both the front and the back. So on the top and the bottom. And here we go. So when we pull it down, you can see the zip has automatically pulled itself horizontal. And then the last thing I'm going to do is give a little tug on the pocket bag. Just going to put a pin in to make sure I have it in the right place. Same on the other side. And then I'm going to go over to the machine, and at 1/8 of an inch from the edge, I'm just going to stitch down to seal that in. And then we're done on this one. And there we go. You can see finished pocket, stitch down the sides. So that can be put to one side, and then we're going to work on the other pockets. So there are a lot of pieces in this pocket. I'm going to do the full pocket as shown in the pattern, which is a pleated pocket with flaps. The alternative pocket would be to do the pleated pocket without flaps, and there's a different side that doesn't then have the seam in it, or you can do the pleated pocket and put elastic around the top. You could even use a mesh or something for that. But I am going to do the standard one. So you can see I've marked up all my pieces. First thing I'm going to do is take the pocket piece, which as you can see is marked, and I'm going to use a bit of glue stick to pop these in position, and I'm going to go and top stitch them in place. There we go, top stitch in position, and now I'm just going to put the lining over the top, matching all the edges, and we're going to stitch up, along and down again at 1/4 inch. There we go, so I've stitched on the 3 sides. Now we need to turn through a nice neat corner, and we don't want bulk inside because we're going to be top stitching right up to the edge. So I'm going to just trim that off. When I sew near corners, I always turn my stitch length right down to try and help me to not push through and get any little fronds. Okay. So I'm going to use my point turner to help me. I'm also going to try and fold it in a bit first. Okay. We'll press this flat, and then I'm going to take it over to the machine and top stitch just the top edge. Now I'm going to go and top stitch. And there we have it, so top stitched just at the top edge. And you can see I've got my lines that I traced on here earlier. So we've got 4 lines, and there are 4 lines on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to line it up. So the first line on the pocket piece and the first line on the side match up. I'm just going to clip that at the bottom, but I'm going to hold that, and then I'm going to go and top stitch that. Then we'll slide the pocket up and I'll show you how to match up the next set of lines. There we go, so that's top stitched on. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift the whole thing up and match it at the top and at the bottom. Now each time you stitch you need to go in the same direction. So what I've started is I've started sort of around here where the stitching line is, and done a little sort of bar tack thingy, and then stitch back and then stitch down. And I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do the last 2, and then we will fold in our pleats. There we have our nice 3 loops. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn it up the other way so it's easier. We're going to find the centre mark on the centre of the pocket and match it to the centre mark on the side and pop a clip in. I'm going to do that for all 3, because now we know that this little loop either side should be even, so when we pleat them in we should get nice even pleats. And then what we're going to do is just tuck it under with our fingers and then keep trying to flatten it until we can see that it's flattened precisely where the stitching is. So there's the first one. See, I've used this technique before. My hanging storage pockets is entirely done with this technique. But it's a really easy way to make a nice pleated finish. There we go. So now I'm going to take that over, and at 1/8 of an inch up, I'm going to stitch all the way across the bottom to hold them in position. And then we're going to work on the flaps. There we have it. Some nice pleated pockets. And so now we're going to work on the flaps. So we're going to start off on the lining B, the underside. We're going to attach our hook and loop tape exactly as we did for the front of the pocket. There we go. So the hook tape is stitched on, and we're literally going to put the two pieces together and stitch around the edge. So use a reasonably short stitch length, and remember to just keep lifting and turning as you go. I've raced on ahead, and I have one completely finished and top stitched, and the other one where I'm going to show you how to turn it through. The easiest thing to do, if you have some, is pinking shears. You used to be able to get a really reasonable set from IKEA. You can get them from charity shops, or just treat yourself to a brand new pair from somewhere. If you haven't got pinking shears, then you're going to need to notch all of this by hand. So with just ordinary scissors, just cut out lots of little triangles. But you can see once you've done this, it makes it turn through really easily. There you go, nice smooth curve. So what you're going to do is just press that so it's nice and flat before you top stitch. There we go. I will go and finish the other one and top stitch this one, and then we'll put them all together on the side. We are so near to finishing this one now, so I'm going to try and not engage the hook and loop to start with. We're just going to match the centre mark on the flap to the centre mark on the lining side and put a couple of clips in. I'm going to pull them to make sure they're completely together and matching, and now I'm going to attach the hook and loop tape together because that will help keep it in position while we're sewing. Okay, so I'm going to take that over to the machine and stitch across the top at, you guessed it, 1/8 of an inch just to hold it. And there we have it. We just have one more thing to do to finish this side, and that is stitching on our upper pocket lining. So that needs to go edges together, stitch across, and then we'll flip it back, and then we're done. And there we go. I'm actually just going to press it to set the seam, and then we'll flip it back. If I can get the iron in there I will, but if not I will finger press it. And there we go. No top stitching required. that is finished. And this next step, you will recognise it. We've done it more than once in my patterns. We are going to make a strap connector and a strap. Obviously, if you don't want a strap connector and strap on your pouch, you don't have to put it on. And on the smaller version, I haven't added the strap connector, but you could easily do so if you thought it would be useful to you. So first things first is I'm preparing the strap connector by just pressing it. There we go, so all the raw edges are enclosed. I'm not going to bother to top stitch this. You can if you want to again. I'm going to feed on a 1/2 inch D-ring. And I've marked up, this is going to be the back. I've marked up the right hand side where shown on the pattern. Now I'm going to actually position this with 1/4 inch over the edge of the thing. I like the idea of having a little bit more, so if the stitching starts to go there and you need to tuck it back in and re-stitch it, you'll have plenty to work with. So in a minute I'm going to take that over and just stitch that at 1/8 of an inch in. And then in the meantime, we can make our wrist strap. Now I've got a free download on my website for making wrist straps, which has this version and another 3 versions. So you can actually make whichever one you choose. This is the most straightforward. So as always, fold in half, press, fold your edges into the middle, press again, and then we'll join it, feed on the thing and join it together. Here we go. So now we are going to feed on our lobster clasp and then open out the ends. And I'm going to go and stitch that at 1/4 inch and then press the seam open. There we go. Just give it a quick press to press that seam open, and then let's get everything back together. Give that a quick press because we want that to be as flat as possible. And now I'm going to take you over to the machine and we can top stitch this. Before I stitch the wrist strap, I'm just going to show you putting the connector on, because I have a sort of method that I use to make sure that the edges don't slide against each other. So I'm going to lift the foot right up. Definitely going to use the hump jumper on this. And basically start in the middle. Sorry, bang the camera. So start in the middle, reverse back, let's get the needle in, and then go forward. And as you can see, the edges haven't slid against each other, so you get a nice finish. Right, now let's do the wrist strap. I haven't done much sewing for you for this pattern because my machine is absolutely desperately in need of a service, hence the sort of strange noises that it keeps making. So I do apologise if it makes any strange noises. So with the wrist strap, I will start on the seam, and I've got a sort of funny little locking stitch which I'm going to use. In fact, I'm going to take it further out so it's just where that little triangle is there on my foot, and I'm going to get it started. And everything's on 3, my stitch length. So anytime you feel like it's getting away from you, or whenever you need to move the clasp, just stop. And if you stop at the seam, you can stitch down it. And now turn it round and you're going the other way. And then stop in the same place. And then last but not least, let's get it out from underneath. We actually need to turn this round the other way. Those little bits of thread and everything will be hidden inside. And I'm going to put the set the lobster claw about 1/2 inch away from the seam, purely because I know with this particular foot that I'm using, that should get it in the optimum position that it will work. It will sew really well. I'm going to put my hump jumper in just to keep it nice and level. I'm going to pop the hump jumper back in there because I do not want it to stick and nest at the bottom. But that's it. I'm going to go back into the middle and finish. And hopefully whatever's making my machine make those funny noises will get sorted when it gets serviced next week. Okay. So take off any little threads sticking out. I've got a finished wrist strap. So these last 2 steps I am going to show you on the bigger one, that's the one we're going to stitch, but I'm also going to be making up the smaller one at the same time, so you get to see the size difference. So on both of them, the first thing we need to do is pop our outer pieces right sides together, and we're going to stitch down that bottom seam and press the seam open. There we go. It looks quite big when it's actually stitched. So we're going to turn it over, and we want to have the front edge at the top. So that's the front. We know on this one that that's the back because that's where the strap connector is. So we want the zip to be on this side. So we're going to start by popping the zip upside down and matching the notches. Now, in the pattern, I've described doing it all in one stage, so having that and putting the lining on at the same time. But actually, it's probably slightly easier if you stitch this on first, sort of just under 1/4 inch in, and then come back and get your lining and put your lining on as well. So that's what I'm going to do. There we go. Now I also need to join my lining pieces together. So I will want my lining eventually to have the zip at the same, pulling to the same direction as the other. So I know I'm going to have to join it like this. So I'm going to join that seam there, and then I'm going to join the other side, and then we'll press the seams pointing downwards. There we go. So I've joined my lining, and now, because we know we want this to be on the side where the zip is, it's actually going the opposite way to where you think. So it's going upside down, so it's going to be on the back, and the pleated pockets is going to be on the front. So match up your centre lines again, and we are going to stitch this seam. So there we go, I've stitched that top seam, and you can see that's going to end up inside. Now the easiest way to make sure your zip doesn't get tangled is to do it back up again and line it up and stitch on exactly like you did previously. And then we'll attach the other side of the lining, and we're ready to do the sides. Okay, well this next bit is slightly awkward on one side. The first side is easy because it's nice and open. You've got your zip there. So what we need to do is find the halfway point so we can match the seam of our outer to the notch on the lining, and then we're going to fold over the top by 1/4 inch. And you can see the seam allowance will face upwards towards that point, and then clip it all the way down on both sides, or both sides of the centre, and do the same at the other end. So clip that in place, remembering your seam allowance there is facing downwards, and on this side it's facing downwards at the top, but on the other side it's facing upwards because of all the bulk of the flaps. There we go. I am going to go and stitch down this entire seam. The other side is a little bit more tricky, so I will show you how to do it. So there we go, first side done, easy peasy. The other side, we've obviously got an issue because we've got this zip in here. So what we're going to do, we're going to stitch it in 2 stages. We need a turning gap, which is very helpful for us because we can use that to enable us to stitch the other side. Right, so what I'm going to do first of all, just going to turn over my fold at the top, exactly like I did previously. And then we know we need our turning gap to be on this size of piece, probably around 4 inches. So we're actually just going to stitch from the top down to, pop that out of the way, down to about here. So about 2 inches, maybe 3. Anyway, I'm going to go and stitch that, then I'll come back and I'll show you what to do next. So there we go, I've just stitched down the top there and I've gone ahead and started to prep as if I was about to turn everything through. So I've trimmed off the corners and trimmed a little bit of the bulk out of the seam allowance, although I didn't do that last time and it was all still fine. So what I'm going to do now is pull on the zip and start the process of turning through. And do the same on the other side as well. I'm not worried about doing a really marvellous job here because we are going to go back and pull it through properly once everything else is stitched. So you can see there we've got a lot more flexibility. So I've gone ahead and turned over the top seam, making sure that zip is right back inside. We're still going to have issues with having to pull and move everything, but it's much easier now. So let's pop a pin in the centre there, clip as you would normally, and then what we're going to do, we're going to have to pull this slightly to start with because we're going to need to stitch from just above that seam there, and that's going to give us our nice turning gap. So it'll all make sense when it's finished. I'm going to go and stitch that now. There we go. You can see as I was stitching, I gradually pulled this further and further inside so that I could get to the end. So now we are going to turn through, but first we are going to press the seam allowance back. Just going to trim off these extra little bits. So now I'm going to do the other way. Do it the other way. I'm going to pull it through this way so that I can get the seam nice and flat to be able to do this seam allowance. Okay, and now we really do turn through. So what we need to do now is get inside with our point turner, give ourselves a nice corner. And then while we're in there, we need to check that the seam allowance is facing upwards. So I can feel mine is. And we're going to press in a second. I'm going to put a couple of clips in to make sure the seam allowance is under control in there. There we go, so 1/4 inch turned over at the top, almost like a little facing. And the same on the other end. And seam allowance pointing to the top. Obviously you can measure this if you want to, or you can just eyeball it. I'll put some more clips in there, and then I'm going to take it over to the machine, and from the outside I'm going to stitch at 1/4 inch down all the way across. Once I've done that, I'll come back and I'll finish pressing all of these seams here. And there we go, it is stitched across the top, and I have pressed all the seams, which took a while, but it is done. Now on this side here where you've got the turning gap, you could use a little bit of your glue to hold that closed, or you can just rely on clips until it's time to close it with the final stitching. So let's do that. So hooks at the back, and already you're starting to see that nice triangular shape forming. Okay, I'm going to make the little one. I'll show you that, and then we'll do the gusset. We are close to the finish now. Got the little ones here so you can see the size difference. I'm going to be showing you the big ones. So what we need to do now is pair these up, and you can see you've drawn dots on the reverse of these. And what we're going to do is we are going to join the dots, stitch around the outside, joining the dots all the way, and on these we need to leave a turning gap of about 2 inches. I suggest you leave it sort of around here near the top of the piece, and I'm going to do one on this side and the other on that side, so they can both go to the back of the pouch when they're done. Here we go, there is a stitched gusset, and I'm going to do my usual and trim the curved edge with pinking shears, and then I'm just going to trim the corners of everything else, not too tight though, just because I don't want to have any little threads poking out. In fact, I put my stitch length down to 2 on this, which is quite short because I know that I'm pretty strong when it comes to turning things through, and I did not want to ruin anything. Okay, before we turn through, as always, press the hem back. There we go, that's turned out, and here's the other one that I prepared earlier. You can see, apart from I've got bits on it, I have top stitched just the top edge ready to be applied to the outer. So we're back with the outer. There's two things we have to mark before we do this next step. One is marking just on the larger version, just where the seam hits the centre notch in the middle of the base. And then we're going to fold these in half, our gussets, and again just mark the very bottom. I'm going to mark both sides. Again, this is my air erasable marker, the one that I can never remember the name of, and it means I can get rid of it afterwards. I'm 3 days into sewing this and you can see it is fading, but I can spritz that with water and that will go completely. Okay, so we are ready to apply our gusset. So I'm going to do it, this is going to be the front, the side without the connector, and I'm going to make sure that the open edge actually is at the front, because then you won't see it because it'll be hidden behind the front. So the first thing I'm going to do is apply this to where the stitching line is, so 1/4 of an inch down from the top. I'm going to clip it. And where the first angle is, I mean, it looks more curved, but I can see there is a slightly angular piece, so that should hit just below where the seam line is for the lining base. So I'm going to clip these on, making sure the edges are nicely matched up. That's our starting point. Everything else is done on the machine. So we're going to stitch down on the machine, pull it around, check that our centre marks are lining up, and then going to keep going all in one go. So I'm going to take you over to the machine. So here we are again. I have moved the camera this time. Hopefully I won't bang it, because I know last time I managed to knock it off centre. So definitely use your hump jumper here, because there's a lot of layers. In fact, I've actually pulled the first flap up, because that just slightly, in fact, pull the flap up and pull the pocket across, because that just smooths out one of those nasty layers there. And then I'm going to start. I'm going to be edge stitching this rather than stitching it 1/8 of an inch in. Not much difference, but there we go. Hump jumper in. I'll start with my locking stitch. I'm going to move that. And I'm actually going to go backwards as well, so that to make sure I match up to the stitching on the outside. And we are ready to stitch. So go slowly, big stitch length, and just make sure all of your edges are together. As I said, anywhere you feel that there's likely to be a big bump, bring your hump jumper in. You can see mine likes to throw itself off the back of the machine. Pop it there ready. And we're just literally going to stitch straight down to the bottom. If you want to use a walking foot for this, obviously it helps with the layers. Otherwise, just keep everything nice and taut. Nearly there. So I know that is where I'm considering my first point to be, and so I'm stitching down to there. Okay, now we're going to swing everything round. So I'm lifting up from the back, you can't see my hand there unfortunately, and lining up that angled edge there. And then swinging it further round, lift that right up. In fact, I'm also going to slightly wiggle my needle to make sure the whole thing can move. There we go. And there's my mark that I marked previously, and that mark does go straight down in the correct position. So I'm going to pop the hump jumper behind it with a large fatter end just to stop it from doing anything weird when I get started. And relax a bit now, pull it around a bit further, and then we're going to do the same once we get to the point again. And last but not least, pull the top over using your zip to flatten it out. And here we go again. Pull it round. And you can see it matches up just to the top where we want it to. Of course, once you've got round this corner here, again use your hump jumper, it'll be much easier to smooth everything out. Okay. There we go. That's the first side is done. And we are finished. So let's try and show you the end there. And the other end. And then it already stands up by itself. But what you can do if you want to make it even more defined is press in and just with your hand press it nice and flat, and that gives you a sharp edge there. So the one last thing I need to do with this bigger one is attach the strap. So if you look down inside, got your zipper pocket at that end, you've got your pleated pockets with the flap at the other end. And I'll just show you the little one. There we go. So same again, pleat it with your hand. This one's got nothing inside at all, just a cute little pouch, which you could even keep inside your bigger pouch if you wanted to. Right, we'll have a quick recap, and that's it though. That's all the sewing done. So congratulations to you, you have finished. I will put any links to anything I've mentioned in the blurb below. Also the details are there for buying the pattern, and otherwise like and subscribe, follow me on my socials, and I will see you for the next pattern. Bye for now.